The symposium is born of the idea that what is lacking in South Africa is sufficient attention to international comparative perspective. The sense is that what South Africa is experiencing in terms of public sector reform, especially since the early 1990s, in many instances, though not always, this is a road that has been tread elsewhere, and that it's worthwhile, therefore, looking at the way in which similar sorts of issues have been dealt with in other countries. It seems to me what is curious about where South Africa is at the moment is that there is not enough. There is some, but there's not enough comparative work being done. And the question is, why not? And I think for two main reasons. I think because the notion of comparative work raises two very, very difficult methodological questions. The first of them is, what are we comparing? What is the basis of the comparison? And with whom are we making that comparison? Now, in South Africa, those questions have a troubled history, I think, partly because I think we in South Africa have a great difficulty in understanding the particular character of our state, the particular character of our society, and who we are alike and who we are dislike. So, for example, just very broadly speaking, we know that during the apartheid period, the apartheid government positioned South Africa as somehow a European outpost in darkest Africa, and that the natural point of comparison, therefore, was with somehow other European states. And we know where that conception of comparison took us. We had a reversal, especially during the Thabo Mbeki period, which positioned South Africa as fundamentally an African country, an African society, and therefore the natural point of comparison was with other African countries. The difficulty there was, what exactly was the nature of that comparison? Made more difficult by the fact that South Africa has a very proud, and I think in many cases excellent history of radical political economy, which positioned South Africa as somehow exceptional, especially relative to the colonial experience elsewhere, but certainly relative to the colonial experience in Africa. And in particular, that South Africa was an advanced industrial capitalist state. And that gave the South African situation a particularity which was lacking in other parts of Africa. So again, the question of in what way South Africa was straightforwardly an African case where the point of comparison was Africa, again, I think is problematic. I think what we're seeing today is some interesting repositioning of South Africa, and therefore by association, the point of comparison. The current administration under President Thabo and under President Zuma has started positioning South Africa relative to Brazil and relative to India, even to Russia. And I suppose it raises the questions about whether we should start thinking about the South African experience, methodologically speaking, in relationship to those societies. But of course, again, it's raising difficult questions about what is the nature of that comparison. I think, and I want to suggest that actually that way of thinking, of asking those questions, as useful as it is potentially also an obstacle to thinking around the conditions of comparative analysis in South Africa. Because what that thinking does is, are we like African states, are we like Brazil, are we like India, etc. What it asks us to do is compare situations, compare a South African situation or an Indian or a Brazilian situation. That approach of comparing situations is only valuable to the extent that we add to it a historical and an institutional dimension. The other one is to look at the role which concepts have played, the roles of ideas, the roles of models of the public service in particular. And there we're talking about global or international histories, transnational histories, if you like. What ways have we thought about the character of the public service? How do we structure it? How do we reform it? How do we engineer it? And what are the concepts that inform those initiatives? Let me conclude by saying I'm very excited that you are here. The purpose really is to start to shift, if you like, the ways in which we're thinking about the public service in South Africa, away from simply descriptions of what is working or not working, a movement away from straightforward normative models of saying what it should be and as opposed to what it is, to thinking more critically, to thinking more analytically about what there is and about what we do with it. So thank you very much.